Emily and I just played, or actually in the middle of playing, Masters of the Universe Battlegrounds. This is a Skirmish miniatures game.
Our first Skirmish miniatures game.
100% our first Skirmish miniatures game. That's a hard thing to say.
Yeah, it is.
We got this from Archon Studios, and this, like we said, this is the first time either of us have played a game like this on the tabletop. I grew up playing computer and video games that are of this ilk, you know, tactical turn-based games like XCOM and things like that. I was hoping that this is going to give me that sort of vibe. Spoiler alert, it definitely did. There are some rules you have to learn, but I do think they've done a pretty good job, and I think it makes sense with this property. They've streamlined the experience for the most part in terms of really trying to get into the game and just the overall flow of the structure of the turns.
Plus, there's a lot of new content. So we have like some Wave 3 stuff that we'll talk to you about, some new things coming out. But first, we want to talk to you a little bit about what our play was like with just the original content.
Yeah, and before we get to the play even, so Archon Studios sent this to us, and I opened the box, and I found this. This was our first sort of slap in the face, if you will, of, oh, this is a real Skirmish miniatures game. Yes, all the miniatures come on these sprue sheets like this. It took me back to my days of building models as a kid. I have never done this with a board game or any sort of game where you're punching out and actually clipping out these miniatures, building them, gluing them, potentially painting them. So I wimped out. And I contacted a local friend of ours at one of the stores here.
You provided more jobs in the economy.
I did. I paid them, just to be clear. I paid him. By the way, his name's down in the description below.
He did a great job,
Maybe
too.
you want to reach out. He did a really good job, Cameron. As you can see, the miniatures he painted for the base game that we have here. And I have to say, right off the bat, that definitely helps pull you into the game.
Yeah.
Now I just want all the terrain painted as well.
Yeah.
Because it really, these games I think are meant, and I'm speaking to you, our audience, because you are mostly board gamers and maybe not as much gamers for this type of game. But it does definitely really pulls you in like you're playing with a toy set, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if they weren't painted, I would have been a little bit more like, okay, we're just moving stuff around, being more tactical. But because they were painted, I was a little more like, oh, I'm He-Man, and I'm going with my sword.
She did a much better He-Man impression than that. I did a couple Skeletor impressions. Till we meet again. No, I promise I won't do that again. But I was playing the bad guys. I was Skeletor, Trapjaw, and Merman. This is sort of the suggested setup for the tutorial scenario.
And I was He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Stratos.
Yeah, there are 2 more characters on both sides in the base game. And like Emily said, there is wave upon wave upon wave of extra content. They sent us a couple boxes from Wave 3 that we'll talk about at the end of the video because they have some extra things in them. But these are the characters we played today. But if you don't want to play the tutorial scenario, there's this whole booklet of sort of different setups for all the terrain. And then you can, and I don't know all the details here, but you can build your team. So there's a set number of points, and there's a chart to use so that you can kind of build a team using these characters, maybe these abilities, these items, things like that. And you have to stay within that 100 points or whatever the point cap is. To build your team, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. We are not there yet.
I was going to say, or if you're like us, and this is maybe your first time venturing into it, you can just start with a tutorial, and we can start with a little bit easier. It gives you who we're starting with, the objects we have, and then the play actually is very streamlined.
Yeah, the play is very streamlined, so we'll talk a little bit about that right now, just to give you kind of the experience of the demo. Once you're all set up, you're going to have some cards. There are fate cards and glory cards. They both look very similar. The 2 glory cards you're going to have in your hand from the very get-go behave similar to the fate cards, but they also have some objectives that you can sort of score opportunistically. But the fate cards look like this, and they're going to have some information at the top that effectively generally will give you actions to spend on your turn, potentially some mana, and then a bottom part that you can use. And sometimes even the bottom part has options, and you just choose one of those things.
Yes.
And additionally, you can actually even play additional fate cards just to use the bottom to sort of juice up any given activation.
So we'll both start with 5 cards. We'll both choose one of those 5 cards from our hand, and then we'll reveal the one with a higher initiative. So mine's 5, David's 7. David will go first. He'll decide who he's going to put that card with, so one of his 3 people, and then he'll start taking actions with that person.
Yeah, so I could put my card down on Skeletor, and I know with this one I have 2 actions, 0 mana, but I have 2 extra mana here. So I would take those 2 extra mana, and then I can take my actions. I'm not going to go through all of the things you can do, but you can spend an action to move. Now, moving in this isn't just like one space with an action. You spend an action and then you look at your move value. Skeletor can go 5, or he can go 8 if you're focused, which is another action you can take. You can spend 1 action to focus. It gives you this focus token, and then you can spend that when you move to move extra far. His movement is 8 in that case.
Or you can also spend the focus when you're attacking.
Yes.
So if you're within range, so if you have a ranged attack, like I have a guy who has a range of 12 for one of his attacks, so I was doing some long range attacks, or if you're He-Man and you just want to fight somebody right next to him, you can do some different types of attacks. If you have focus, that's going to make the attacks easier.
Yes.
Because basically what we're doing when we're attacking is we're having a scope of 4. So it'll tell you how many dice that you actually need to roll, and each time you're rolling those dice, you want to get 4 as your number to hit.
Yeah, that is one of the sort of most streamlined aspects, and the rulebook underscores that a couple different times. You're always just shooting for 4s. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some things that can affect that. If you're attacking someone sort of from their rear arc, you can go down and you get 3s or higher.
Yeah.
There are other things as well that might affect what they call your scope, which is the value you're shooting for on the die. But the number of die you're rolling is based on the statistic associated with the weapon you're using. You roll those up, and then you might use some of the mana to re-roll and some effects on some cards to do various things.
But the cool thing is, too, that you rolled a 6.
Yes.
So any 6s are going to get re-rolled again. They're going to be explosions. You get to roll another die, and if that's a 6, you get to roll it again, and you get to keep adding more and more dice as long as the next re-rolls are a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never seen an explosion. I've seen exploding dice in games before, but usually if they explode and I got a 4, it would still be a success. But with these explosions, they kind of limit it, so the exploding dice have to be 5s or 6s to actually be successes. But yeah, you can end up having a big turn. Now, with that said, you're rolling dice, right? So if you're a Euro board gamer out there, be warned, there's going to be times where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I've got 6 die, 1s and 2s. So you're going to want to maybe get some mana. There are plenty of ways to mitigate your die, but at the end of the day, dice are going to be rolled.
It is dice.
And as you can see here, He-Man was the victim of maybe good
Sadly.
dice rolling on my part, maybe bad dice rolling on your part.
Yeah, I did. There was a little thing that went on, too, where my flamethrower from Stratos actually did end up hurting He-Man more than it ended up hurting Skeletor, so that was a little mix-up
I will
there.
say there's a lot of cool thematic things that happen in the game. She did use a flamethrower, and when you use the flamethrower, it does area of effect damage even against any allies that are there. So she effectively had to roll an attack against my character that was in there, and then her character, which was He-Man. Her attack against my character actually didn't do anything. Her attack against He-Man actually did a damage to him.
He's not made to defend. He's made to just attack.
Well, he wasn't expecting to be attacked by his ally.
He really wasn't.
But I ultimately took He-Man down right here, which is one of the ways you can score points as well. When you down opponents, you're going to score points. When you claim some of these tokens, at least in this scenario, there's these objective tokens around the board. Each player has 2 in their sort of starting zone. That's for the other player to try to secure. And then there's 1 here in the middle. Those are also going to be worth points. You play this game back and forth. So like Emily said, I'm going to activate a character. She's going to activate a character. We go back and forth until we've activated all of our characters or we've passed and we don't want to play anymore. Then that round's going to end. We do that again, at least in this scenario, 4 more times at the end of 4 rounds, unless I've defeated her entire team or vice versa. We're going to just add up the points to see who won the most points, and that was the winner. But like we said, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about what they're offering in Wave 3. I don't know if Wave 3 is just these 2 boxes or if it's more than that. They have a ton of different boxes and a ton of different waves. I think I've seen some videos out there with Wave 7 content. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. If there's a character in the Masters of the Universe IP,
they're going to be in the Battleground.
I'm pretty sure it's in the game. But this is a bad guy pack, basically. And then
I have the good guys.
The good guy pack. They came with this. So this was the sprue sheet for the 2 characters that came with that. Both came with 2 characters. But the other thing on this sprue sheet is kind of a unique piece of terrain. I have this gas tank here, and when it's out there, it has this kind of unique and interesting effect where people around it must be like sleeping gas or something, because the people around it, if they're activated, they can only be activated normally with cards of a certain initiative.
Yes.
It has to be a lower initiative because they're behaving more slowly. And if they act with one that's higher, it actually penalizes the stats on that card.
Nothing. And instead, mine has a huge crater, which is very cool. So it's taking up multiple hexes. And the way it's going to get used is there's a new item called the Bomb Pack.
Yeah.
And this bomb packs, you spend one action and you place a crater within 8 inches of where you are. So the thing about this crater, though, is it's not, so this terrain we have, we just did one level, right? But you can have multiple levels, too.
Yeah.
It like stacks up, we can jump up, we can go up on ladders. This crater, when it comes out, you're literally dropping a bomb and it will get rid of anything in those spaces.
Yeah, it can it's basically like destructible terrain in a board game. You can place it, like it can take out this wall and go right there in its place. Now, it's still terrain that you can't walk on, but it's going to change line of sight for sure in some cases. So if someone's hiding behind things, they might not be able to hide anymore. And of course, the two characters are really unique. Mine was Stinkor and Whiplash. And He-Man back in the day, a lot of these characters were built for like action figures. Stinkor was definitely one of them. But the ability here is very thematic. They're going to basically be able to use a bunch of the mana they've collected to create all sorts of noxious fumes around them and put on several different debuffs if they want to the characters around them.
That's very cool. I instead have Buzz Off, so the big bee, and Manny Faces. So he's the one who's...
Oh, I remember that guy.
His face changes, right? And so his abilities are the face of the robot and the face of the monster. And basically when he does one or the other, his stats kind of change for it each. So like one of them is going to help his strength, while the other one is going to help his perception, whereas his defense on the other side goes down for each. So you're kind of like balancing back and forth, what do you want to do with him? And I saw too that in some of the items that it has, there's like there's a laser gun for a monster, a laser gun for a robot, and a laser gun for a human.
Oh.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So he's got quite a few things going on with his new lineup.
Yeah, and when we played the tutorial, there's even a smaller deck of these items that weren't involved in the tutorial we played. And there's a ton of things here that are basically things that you can have. A lot of them are one-time effects and things like that you might be able to pick up or add to the game at the beginning of the game. But that was our first experience, a bit of an overview of our experience and a bit of an overview of what's in Wave 3 for you. If you have any questions about any of it, please make them in the comments below. And you know what? If you'd like to see gameplay of this, let us know. We might get a live stream. I don't know if I can twist Emily's arm to do it again.
Not this arm.
But not her right arm. But Ryan and I, two of us will play this because we love two-player games. And maybe we'll do a live stream if there's enough people in the comments who say, yeah, let's see some gameplay. But like I said, ask any questions down there you want. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.
Until we meet again!